In a world driven by numbers, contracts, and the relentless pursuit of fame, we often forget the true value of life. Happiness is measured by resounding successes, freedom is exchanged for endless working hours, and love becomes a luxury. But then there are moments, unexpected events that force us to stop, to lose everything, in order to find ourselves. This is the story of a man who had everything, yet had nothing. He was a billionaire, a king in the cutthroat business world. But he was also utterly lonely. His life was a never-ending cycle of tense meetings, long flights, and sleepless nights. Until one day his body collapsed and his mind erased all his memories. He woke up no longer the powerful billionaire, but just an anonymous man. And this is the story of a woman who lost everything, yet had everything. She was a single mother struggling daily with the burdens of making a living. Yet she possessed a priceless treasure, a kind heart, and 2 daughters with pure souls. Her life was a constant battle. But every morning she woke up, she found joy in simple things, in her children's laughter, in their warm hugs. Destiny willed these 2 worlds to collide. On an anxious dawn, in a peaceful small town named Oak Creek, a man who had lost everything and a woman who had everything met. From one act of unconditional kindness, a door opened for them, leading to a miraculous story of love, compassion, and choice. This is not just a story about a billionaire finding love. This is a story about how a family became a peaceful haven for a lost soul, and how their kindness changed not only one person's life, but the lives of many others. The dawn in the town of Oak Creek always held a breathtaking, peaceful beauty. The first golden rays of sun filtered through the leaves, painting every rooftop and every street. Kendra Johnson, 30, a widow for 4 years, no longer paid attention to that beauty. Every morning she woke up before daybreak, her mind consumed by the worries of life. Kendra worked part-time for a small accounting firm, and in the afternoons she put on an apron and diligently cleaned offices. Her life was a relentless battle where money determined everything. Lately, Kendra had been facing the threat of layoffs. The company was struggling, and she knew she was one of the first people who could be let go. Her old beat-up car, a companion for so many years, was also starting to protest more often. The hacking sound of its engine every morning was a painful reminder of an uncertain future. Worry was like an invisible ghost clinging to her from the moment she fell asleep until she woke up. "Mom, I see it." Olivia, her lively and brave daughter's shout, pulled Kendra out of her thoughts. Olivia was standing next to the ancient oak tree in front of the house, pointing to a newly built sparrow's nest. In contrast, her twin sister Ella was cowering behind Kendra, more reserved and introverted. Ella loved books and fairy tales. She believed in magic, but was also easily frightened by life's unexpected surprises. "Mom, I found this." Olivia ran over holding a bright red maple leaf. "Isn't it beautiful, Mom?" Kendra smiled, a rare smile in those gloomy days. "It's very beautiful, my love. But I think we should go inside. I need to prepare breakfast." "Kendra!" Olivia's piercing scream rang out, filled with terror. Kendra turned back, her heart sinking, when she saw Olivia pointing towards the oak tree. This time it wasn't a bird's nest or a maple leaf. It was a man. He lay motionless, his face as white as paper, his dark brown hair smeared with dirt. His pristine white shirt was now crumpled and filthy. Still, Kendra could see that his navy blue suit was incredibly expensive, and his shiny leather shoes were spotless. The contrast between his luxurious appearance and his current miserable state confused her. "Mom, is that man dead?" Ella whispered, her voice trembling. Kendra rushed over, trying to stay calm. "No, Ella. Don't think that." She knelt down beside the man, placing her fingers on his neck to check his pulse. His breathing was weak and shallow, but it was still there. A small cut on his forehead had stopped bleeding, but the skin around it was bruised. "Oh my God," Kendra whispered to herself. This was not a drunk who had lost his way. His face clearly showed pain and exhaustion. Olivia, with a child's bravery, stepped closer. "He looks hurt, Mom. Should we help him?" Kendra hesitated. Her heart told her to do something, but her fears rose up. Could this man be dangerous? Was she putting her children in trouble? She remembered what her husband had said before he passed away, that the world wasn't always as good as the fairy tales. But then she looked into Ella's anxious eyes and Olivia's bravery, and she remembered the lesson she had always taught her children. "We always have to help people in trouble, Mom," Olivia said, as if reading her mother's thoughts. "You always said that." Kendra took a deep breath. A mother's compassion had conquered her fear. "You're right, my love. I did say that." She pulled out her phone, deciding to call 911. "Olivia, Ella, you two go inside. I'll call an ambulance." But when the dispatcher heard Kendra's address in Oak Creek, their voice became indifferent. "Yes, ma'am. We have several other emergencies waiting. An ambulance could take up to 2 hours to get there." 2 hours? Kendra looked at the man, struggling to breathe. 2 hours might be too late. His face was pale, his skin cold. She couldn't ignore him. "No, we're not going inside," Olivia insisted. "We'll help you." "Yes." Ella also gathered all her courage. "We'll help you save him." Kendra looked at her 2 daughters and saw determination in their eyes. She realized they were more grown up than she had thought, and their kindness had become a great strength. She felt ashamed for having hesitated. Now, she had no choice but to trust her instincts and her own goodness. "All right," Kendra said, her voice becoming stronger. "Then we'll bring him inside together." They didn't know that this simple and brave decision would not only save a man's life, but also change their own lives forever. Together they formed an impromptu rescue team. Olivia stood at his head, Kendra in the middle, and Ella timidly held his feet. The man was much heavier than Kendra had imagined. Every step she took was a struggle. Her breath came in gasps and sweat soaked her shirt. The twins, though small, were a huge source of moral support. "You can do it, Mom." Olivia cheered, her small voice full of determination. "He's almost inside." Ella, despite her fear, used all her strength to pull her big round brown eyes, never leaving the man's pale face. She believed this was a miracle, a fairy tale she had read in a book, and her mission was to help the prince wake up. Kendra looked at her children, seeing their faith and kindness become her own motivation. She was infinitely grateful to have children like them. Finally, after a struggle, they managed to get the man inside the house. He was carefully laid on the old sofa where Kendra usually read to her children every night. She rushed to get a warm cloth, carefully wiping the dried blood from his forehead. Kendra noticed a small lightning bolt-shaped scar on his wrist. It seemed to be an old scar, but it made her feel strange, like a sign of fate. Kendra looked around her small house. The home was modest, with worn-out furniture, but filled with memories. The wooden table Kendra had built herself, the children's funny drawings taped to the walls, and the steady ticking of the clock. Everything exuded a sense of warmth and security. She suddenly saw a stark contrast with the man lying on the sofa. His expensive suit was probably worth more than all of her possessions combined. Kendra wondered what a man like him was doing unconscious in her yard, a place where no one had any business being. She turned to her children, her voice gentle and reassuring. "You two go to your room and play. I'll watch over him. I'll call 911 again later." Olivia, always curious, asked, "Mom, is he a bad guy?" Kendra looked at the man's refined, pale face and answered honestly, "I don't know, my love. But I do know that whoever he is, he needed help. And and we helped him. Ella, still timid, asked, "So how long will he stay here?" Kendra smiled and replied, "Just until he wakes up and remembers who he is." The two girls obeyed, but Kendra knew their curiosity and worry had not disappeared. They lingered at the door to their room, their eyes fixed on the man on the sofa. Kendra knew she had brought something unusual into her peaceful life, but she believed it was the right thing to do. Kendra sat in the armchair opposite, quietly observing the man. She saw his weakness, the fragility of a human being facing death. Suddenly, all her fears vanished. Kendra no longer saw a potentially dangerous stranger, but only a human being who needed to be cared for. She suddenly remembered her grandmother's words. "Sometimes we are all angels in disguise. Sometimes we are the angels who need help, and sometimes we are the angels who provide it." Kendra nodded. She believed this was one of those moments. Though she didn't know what was to come, she was ready to face it. She trusted in her own kindness and that of her children. And in that moment she knew she was not alone. Kendra sat quietly observing the man on the sofa. The armchair Kendra was sitting in was a used item she had bought with a deflated cushion and faded fabric, creating a strong contrast with the luxury of her uninvited guest. She paid attention to every detail, the shiny stainless steel wristwatch, the exquisite stitching on the suit, and especially the elegant, aloof look that radiated from his face, even while unconscious. This made Kendra even more certain that he was not an ordinary person. She listened to the steady ticking of the pendulum clock, each tick counting down to something. Olivia and Ella's whispers echoed from the bedroom, but they were no longer the usual cheerful chatter, but questions filled with curiosity. "Do you think he'll wake up, Ella?" "I don't know, but in my fairy tales, princes always wake up. Maybe we should kiss his forehead like the princess." "No, Mom said not to touch him." Kendra smiled bitterly. Her initial fear had given way to an unusual curiosity and a sense of responsibility. She wasn't just worried about her and her children's safety. She was also worried about this man. Someone must be worried about him. A man with his appearance couldn't be anonymous. Unable to wait any longer, Kendra decided to check his wallet. The wallet was dark brown leather, soft and expensive. Inside, she found a thick wad of cash, an estimated several $100s. There were several black credit cards, the kind Kendra had only seen in movies, and an elegant business card. But it only had the name of a large law firm with no individual name. This was very strange. There was no ID card, driver's license, or any other form of identification. There was only one small photo of a tall, modern office building. Kendra recognized the building, one of the symbols of wealth in the city center, dozens of miles away from Oak Creek. Kendra felt a chill run down her spine. This man was not just wealthy, he was a mystery. The feeling of unease returned stronger than ever. She quickly put the wallet back in his suit pocket as if to erase any trace of her discovery. She didn't want to get involved in the troubles of his world. "Kendra!" The man's loud cry startled Kendra. She quickly ran to his side and knelt down. His eyes were wide open, but there was no focus, only panic. Kendra could see the fear in those dark brown eyes. "Where am I? Where is this?" His voice was hoarse and filled with anxiety. Kendra tried to stay calm. "You're at my house in Oak Creek. You were unconscious in my yard this morning. I found you." The man tried to sit up, but a sharp pain in his head made him grab his temples and groan. My head. "Take it easy." Kendra gently supported him. "You need to lie down. You have an injury on your forehead." He looked at Kendra, then around the small, simple room with Kendra's children's funny drawings hanging on the walls. He frowned, trying to search his memory. but only finding a thick fog. Who? Who am I? What's my name? He asked, his voice full of despair. I don't remember anything. Kendra was stunned. Memory loss. This was something she had not expected at all. She looked into his bewildered eyes and realized it wasn't an act. The fear and loneliness in those eyes were real. Kendra suddenly remembered her 2 daughters hiding in the bedroom. Should she send this man away? Would it be safe to shelter a stranger, a mysterious man with amnesia? But then once again, compassion welled up in Kendra. She couldn't send him away. He needed help. He didn't have a single clue about his life. Kendra realized she couldn't turn a blind eye to a person so utterly lost. I don't know who you are, Kendra said, her voice becoming softer. But I won't abandon you. You're safe now. Just rest. Kendra's words were like a sedative, helping the man calm down. He looked at Kendra, his confused eyes slowly finding a glimmer of hope and trust. He felt an invisible thread pulling him closer to this woman, a stranger who gave him a feeling of warmth and safety that he couldn't remember ever having. The sun was high in the sky, its warmth filtering through the windows into the small house. Kendra had already fed her children breakfast and rushed them off to school. Before they left, she had given them very specific instructions. You must be on your best behavior, don't tell anyone about this, and most importantly, don't disturb him. However, Kendra was certain her instructions wouldn't last long. Little Ella was timid, but once she trusted someone, her curiosity would overcome her fear. As for Olivia, she was always full of energy and courage. Kendra also felt anxious leaving a stranger with her children, but she realized his presence wasn't dangerous. In fact, it even brought her a sense of peace. When Kendra returned, she was surprised to find Jonathan sitting on the sofa, absently looking at one of Ella's children's books. His eyes no longer held panic, but instead a look of calm and tranquility. Olivia and Ella were sitting on the floor, each with a colored pencil drawing. Mom, he's awake, Olivia cheered. We told him about the oak tree and about a squirrel named Chip. Kendra walked closer, her voice gentler now. Are you feeling better? Yes, I think so, Jonathan said, putting the book down. I'm sorry for the trouble. Thank you for your help. Kendra sat in the old armchair opposite him. She tried to find a way to talk without bringing up his memory loss, but Olivia did it for her. We named him Mr. Kind, Mom, because he's so nice. We asked him if he remembered his name, and he didn't remember anything. Kendra looked at Jonathan. He smiled slightly, a warm smile that Kendra had never seen from him before. That smile made his usually aloof face appear more approachable and kind-hearted. Mr. Kind, he repeated. I like that name. It feels right. We told Mr. Kind about the stories in our books, Ella said, pointing to her book, and he seemed to really like them. He has a scar that looks like a lightning bolt. Jonathan looked down at his wrist, where the small lightning bolt-shaped scar was. He frowned, trying to remember, but there was nothing. He shook his head sadly, and Kendra quickly changed the subject. Are you hungry? I'll make lunch. Jonathan watched Kendra walk into the kitchen, then looked at the 2 daughters engrossed in their drawings. Kendra worked tirelessly, the fatigue evident on her face, but she still always smiled. He realized that while his life was an empty canvas, theirs was full of color. He felt a strong urge to protect them, to become a part of this small world. During lunch, Jonathan tried to ask Kendra about her life, her job, and her children. Kendra, initially hesitant, eventually began to open up. She talked about her husband, who had passed away in an accident, and the difficulties of raising her 2 daughters. She spoke of her financial worries, her broken-down car, and the risk of losing her job. Jonathan listened attentively, his eyes showing not only sympathy, but also a deep understanding. He couldn't remember anything about his past, but he could feel the pain and the strength in Kendra. In the afternoon, as Kendra was clearing the dining table, Jonathan accidentally saw a financial report in her bag. Curious, he glanced at it and immediately recognized the numbers. Kendra was in big trouble. The company was downsizing, and her financial situation was alarming. All the worries she had talked about were clearly reflected in those cold numbers. Even though he couldn't remember anything about his past, Jonathan realized that these numbers were incredibly familiar. He realized he had to do something. He couldn't just sit by and watch this woman bear these heavy burdens on her shoulders. He had received their kindness, and now it was his turn to reciprocate. Even without memories, a name, or money, he believed he could help. "Kendra," Jonathan said when she turned back, "is there anything I can do to help? I have a feeling I know a lot about these numbers. I could help you with those financial problems." Kendra smiled gently and shook her head. "It's okay, Jonathan. This is my responsibility. You should rest." "But I want to help," Jonathan insisted. "I can't just sit here after all you've done for me. I feel like I can do it. I feel like there's an inherent strength in me." Kendra looked into his sincere eyes and realized that his words were not bragging, but a genuine desire to help. He wanted to be a part of this family, to become a kind person, just like the name her children had given him. "All right," Kendra said, her smile brighter than ever. "Then, Mr. Kind will start with the dishes." Jonathan smiled. It wasn't the smile of a billionaire, but the smile of a man who found joy in the simplest things. He realized that the life he couldn't remember might have been very successful, but his current life was giving him something even more precious: happiness. Kendra never thought her morning could start this way. Instead of struggling alone with her worries, she was working with Jonathan to fix her old car. Although Jonathan said he didn't remember anything about mechanics, his hands worked with a strange, masterful precision. He carefully unscrewed each bolt, checked every part, and after just an hour the engine roared to life, running as smoothly as if nothing had ever been wrong. How did you do that?" Kendra asked, astonished. Jonathan shrugged, a look of confusion on his face. "I don't know. My hands just did it on their own. I guess they're used to it." Kendra looked at him, filled with admiration. "You really are a talented man, Mr. Kind." Jonathan smiled. "And you, Kendra, are an extraordinary woman." After fixing the car, Kendra had the courage to suggest that Jonathan come to work with her. She couldn't leave him alone at home, and she didn't want her children near a stranger. Besides, she needed help, and her intuition told her that Jonathan was trustworthy. The office Kendra cleaned was an old 3-story building in the center of town. When Kendra led Jonathan inside, he couldn't hide his surprise. The old walls, the narrow hallways, and the cluttered offices were all foreign to him. "Are you sure you're okay?" Kendra asked, worried. Jonathan nodded, giving her a warm smile. "Perfectly. I'll do a good job." And he did better than Kendra had imagined. He didn't just clean, he organized the work scientifically. He divided the tasks, logically assigning a job to each person. Kendra, Olivia, and Ella were all given clear assignments. "Kendra, you clean the first floor. Olivia, Ella, you two clean the conference room, and I'll clean the 3rd floor." Kendra was astonished. How do you know how to clean an office?" Jonathan shrugged, his face full of professionalism. "I don't know, but I have a feeling I've done this many times before." And he did it very well. He cleaned the 3rd floor quickly, cleanly, and neatly. He didn't just clean, he also rearranged the furniture, organized the documents, and sorted the files. He worked with skill, precision, and efficiency. Kendra looked at him, filled with admiration. "You really are a talented man, Mr. Kind." Jonathan smiled. "And you, Kendra, are an extraordinary woman." After they finished cleaning, Kendra bravely suggested Jonathan join her and her children for dinner. She couldn't leave him alone at home, and she didn't want her children near a stranger. Besides, she needed help, and her intuition told her that Jonathan was trustworthy. That evening, as they ate dinner together, Kendra told Jonathan about her life. She talked about her husband, who had passed away in an accident, and the difficulties of raising her 2 daughters. She spoke of her financial worries, her broken-down car, and the risk of losing her job. Jonathan listened attentively, his eyes showing not only sympathy, but also a deep understanding. He couldn't remember anything about his past, but he could feel the pain and the strength in Kendra. "I will help you," Jonathan said, his voice firm. "I will help you solve those financial problems." Kendra smiled gently and shook her head. "It's okay, Jonathan. This is my responsibility. You should rest." "No," Jonathan insisted. "I want to help. I can't just sit here after you all have helped me. I feel like there's an inherent strength in me." Kendra looked into his sincere eyes and realized that his words were not boasting, but a genuine desire to help. He wanted to be a part of this family, to become a kind person, just like the name her children had given him. "All right," Kendra said, her smile brighter than ever. "Then Mr. Kind will start with the dishes." Jonathan smiled. It wasn't the smile of a billionaire, but the smile of a man who found joy in the simplest things. He realized that the life he couldn't remember might have been very successful, but his current life was giving him something even more precious: happiness. Kendra's life since Jonathan's arrival had begun to change in a strange way. Her burdens seemed to be shared, her worries lessened. Her old car, after being automatically repaired by Jonathan, ran surprisingly smoothly. The offices with his participation were cleaner and more organized than ever, so much so that the building manager called Kendra to praise her. However, the biggest changes came from mysterious occurrences. One morning, while worrying about not having enough money for groceries, Kendra opened her door and found fresh, full bags of groceries on her porch. Fruits, vegetables, meat, and fish things she only dared to buy for special occasions were now plentiful for the entire week. Another time, Kendra received a call from the electric company informing her that her overdue bill had been fully paid. It was then that Kendra realized these things only happened after Jonathan arrived. "Jonathan," Kendra said, her voice filled with suspicion. "Do you know anything about this?" Jonathan, who was helping Ella and Olivia clean up their toys, looked up. "About what, Kendra?" "The grocery bags, the electricity bill. They were all paid for mysteriously, and they only happened after you were here." Jonathan smiled gently, a warm but slightly flustered smile. "Maybe it's magic, Kendra. You used to believe in magic, didn't you?" Kendra looked him straight in the eyes. "I believe in the magic of kindness, and I believe that magic comes from you." Jonathan fell silent, his eyes avoiding her gaze. He couldn't outright lie, but he also couldn't tell the truth. He was afraid Kendra would feel insulted or hurt if she realized he was helping her with a large sum of money. He wanted Kendra to accept his kindness, not because she needed it, but because he wanted to give it. "I don't remember anything, Kendra," Jonathan said, his voice dropping. "I don't know who I am. I don't know if I have money or not, but I do know that I want to help you. And if that's magic, then I hope the magic continues." Kendra understood his meaning. She didn't want to make it difficult for Jonathan or make him feel pressured. She realized that Jonathan was protecting her self-respect, and she needed to protect him too. His kindness wasn't charity, it was a sincere gift. "All right, Mr. Kind," Kendra said, her smile radiant. Then let's accept this magic together. Olivia and Ella, the two little girls, naively believed Jonathan's magic story. They happily ate the delicious food and told Jonathan stories about school and their dreams. Jonathan listened attentively, his eyes full of warmth. One evening, Kendra bravely told Jonathan about her dreams. She wanted to become a teacher, and she wanted to have enough money for her children to take dance and art lessons. She wanted to build a better life for her children, but she felt stuck. Jonathan listened, his eyes full of determination. "Kendra," he said, "your dreams are beautiful, and we will make them a reality." Kendra smiled gently. "You talk as if you were a billionaire." Jonathan smiled. "Maybe I am a billionaire, Kendra, but I don't remember. And it doesn't matter. What matters is that I want to be a good person, a person who can help others. And I want to start by helping you." Kendra looked at him, her heart filled with warmth. She realized that Jonathan wasn't just a mysterious man. He was also a companion, a kindred spirit, a person who had brought her new hope in life. Even though he couldn't remember anything about his past, Jonathan had found his purpose in Kendra's small house. He had found a family, a peaceful haven where he was loved and accepted. And Kendra had found a companion, a person who had helped her overcome difficulties, a person who had brought her new hope in life. The peaceful days for Kendra's family seemed to have overshadowed all worries about the future. Kendra was no longer concerned about losing her job because Jonathan had helped her so much. She also no longer had to worry about fixing her car because Jonathan had already taken care of it. All her burdens seemed to be shared, and Kendra felt happier than ever. However, that joy didn't last long. One afternoon, Kendra was working in the kitchen when the doorbell rang. She went to open the door and saw a well-dressed woman standing on her doorstep. She wore a charcoal gray suit, had heavy makeup, and sharp, piercing eyes. "Kendra Johnson?" she asked. Kendra nodded. "Yes, that's me." "I am Patricia Wells," she said, "Jonathan Richards's personal lawyer. I believe he is here." Kendra's heart sank. "Jonathan Richards? I don't know anyone by that name." Patricia gave a cold smile. "Don't lie. I've been tracking him for a long time. He left Oak Creek a few days ago, but he came back, and I believe he is here." Kendra tried to stay calm. "I don't know him. Please leave." Patricia was unfazed. "You can lie to me, but you can't lie to yourself. Jonathan Richards is a billionaire, and you are holding him. I don't know what you want, but I can tell you that you will get nothing. Jonathan Richards is an important man, and you are causing a lot of trouble." Kendra felt a surge of anger. "I am not causing trouble. He is the one who came here, and I helped him. I have no intention of holding him." Patricia looked Kendra up and down, her eyes full of contempt. "I see. You just want to take advantage of him. You want his money. I can give you a sum of money, and you can return him to me. He needs to get back to his work, get back to his life." Kendra felt insulted. "I don't need your money. I don't need his money. I just want him to be safe." Patricia laughed loudly. "Safe, he is safer than ever. He is with a poor woman in a small house. What do you think he can do? He needs to get back to his world." Kendra couldn't take it anymore. "Please leave. I have nothing more to say to you." Patricia turned to go, but she left a business card on the table. "If you have any problems, call me. I will help you." Kendra slammed the door shut. She felt panicked. Jonathan Richards. So he was a billionaire. A billionaire with amnesia who had come here. She felt ashamed and insulted. She had helped him, but he had taken advantage of her kindness. She looked at the business card on the table. her eyes full of anger. "I will not call you," she whispered to herself. "I will not call anyone." She ran into the bedroom where Jonathan was playing with the children. She looked at him, her heart filled with anger. "Jonathan," she said, "is there something you want to tell me?" Jonathan was surprised. "No, Kendra." "What's wrong?" "A woman named Patricia Wells was here." Kendra said, her voice trembling. "She said you are a billionaire and that you took advantage of me. She said you need to get back to your world." Jonathan was stunned. He looked at Kendra, his eyes full of confusion. "A billionaire? I don't know anything about that." "Then you should try to remember," Kendra said, her voice full of anger. "You should try to remember who you are, what you've done, how you've lied to me." Jonathan bowed his head, his heart full of remorse. "Kendra, I'm sorry. I don't know anything. I don't remember anything." "Then remember," Kendra said, her voice full of anger. "Remember who you are, what you've done, how you've lied to me." Jonathan was silent. He didn't know what to say. He couldn't remember. He only knew that he didn't want to leave Kendra and the children. He didn't want to go back to his world. Kendra left the bedroom, her heart a whirlwind of confused emotions. Anger, disappointment, and even fear were all mixed together. She stared at the business card Patricia Wells had left on the table, the cold, embossed letters like a mockery. Jonathan Richards, billionaire. The name echoed in her head, shattering the false peace they had built. Kendra ran into the kitchen, turned on the stove, and began to prepare dinner. But her hands were trembling, her mind unable to focus. The spaghetti she usually made for the children suddenly tasted bland. She remembered Jonathan's harmless lies, the way he had secretly helped her, the way he had always treated her and the children with sincerity. Was it all just an act? Was he taking advantage of her kindness to escape responsibility? The questions swirled around Kendra, making her feel exhausted. She looked out the window where the last rays of the afternoon sun were fading, giving way to darkness. Just like her life, the peace she had found was slowly disappearing. Jonathan walked out of the bedroom, his face full of remorse. He stood behind Kendra, silently watching her. He didn't know what to say, what to do. He only knew that he didn't want to lose her. "Kendra," he said, his voice trembling. "I'm sorry. I don't know anything. I don't remember anything." Kendra turned around, her eyes full of tears. "You don't remember anything. You don't remember who you are. You don't remember what you've done." Jonathan bowed his head, his heart full of remorse. "I'm sorry. I don't know anything. I don't remember anything." Kendra couldn't hold back her tears. She ran to hug him, her tears soaking his shoulder. "Why? Why did you have to be a billionaire?" Jonathan hugged her back, his heart full of remorse. "I'm sorry. I don't know anything. I don't remember anything." Kendra sobbed uncontrollably. She didn't know if she was crying out of anger or disappointment. She just knew that she was in a lot of pain. She had fallen in love with him, a mysterious man, a man who had brought her new hope, but now she felt she had been deceived. "Go," Kendra said, her voice trembling. "Go back to your life. You don't belong in our world." Jonathan held her tightly. "No, Kendra. I don't want to go. I don't want to go back to my life. I want to be here with you and the children. I want to be a part of our world." Kendra shook her head. "You can't. You're a billionaire. You have responsibilities. You have people waiting for you." Jonathan let go of her and looked her straight in the eyes. "And Kendra, you have dreams. You have hopes. You have people waiting for you. You have people who need you, and I want to be one of them." Kendra didn't know what to say. She looked at him, her eyes full of tears. She didn't know if she should believe him. She didn't know if she should give him a chance. "I will remember," Jonathan said, his voice firm. "I will remember who I am, but I will not forget who I have been. I will not forget that I was a man who fell in love with you and the children." Kendra looked at him, her heart filled with warmth. She realized that Jonathan wasn't just a mysterious man. He was also a man who had fallen in love with her. And she had also fallen in love with him, a man who had brought her new hope. Kendra and Jonathan sat facing each other in silence. Kendra's small room suddenly felt more suffocating than ever, and the innocent laughter of Olivia and Ella from the bedroom could not soothe the tense atmosphere. Kendra felt as if there was an invisible wall separating them, a wall built of secrets and lies. "I'm sorry," Kendra said, her voice trembling. "I shouldn't have said that." Jonathan bowed his head, his heart full of remorse. "No, Kendra. I'm sorry. I lied to you. I deceived you. I didn't tell you the truth." "But you didn't remember," Kendra said, her voice full of confusion. "You didn't remember who you were. You didn't remember what you'd done." "But I did know," Jonathan said, his voice full of remorse. "I knew for a long time. I knew I was a billionaire. I knew I had deceived you." Kendra was stunned. "You've known for a long time, since when?" "I've known since I woke up," Jonathan said, his voice full of remorse. "I've known since I saw my wallet. I've known since I saw my watch. I've known since I saw my car." Kendra couldn't hold back her tears. She ran to hug him, her tears soaking his shoulder. Why did you have to be a billionaire?" Jonathan hugged her back, his heart full of remorse. "I'm sorry. I don't know anything. I don't remember anything." Kendra sobbed uncontrollably. She didn't know if she was crying out of anger or disappointment. She just knew that she was in a lot of pain. She had fallen in love with him, a mysterious man, a man who had brought her new hope. But now, she felt she had been deceived. "Go," Kendra said, her voice trembling. "Go back to your life. You don't belong in our world." Jonathan held her tightly. "No, Kendra. I don't want to go. I don't want to go back to my life. I want to be here with you and the children. I want to be a part of our world." Kendra shook her head. "You can't. You're a billionaire. You have responsibilities. You have people waiting for you." Jonathan let go of her and looked her straight in the eyes. "And Kendra, you have dreams. You have hopes. You have people waiting for you. You have people who need you. And I want to be one of them." Kendra didn't know what to say. She looked at him, her eyes full of tears. She didn't know if she should believe him. She didn't know if she should give him a chance. "I will remember," Jonathan said, his voice firm. "I will remember who I am, but I will not forget who I have been. I will not forget that I was a man who fell in love with you and the children." Kendra looked at him, her heart filled with warmth. She realized that Jonathan wasn't just a mysterious man, he was also a man who had fallen in love with her. And she had also fallen in love with him, a man who had brought her new hope. The tears had stopped, but the pain in Kendra's heart lingered. She sat on the old armchair, watching Jonathan, who stood by the window, his eyes fixed on the oak tree where he had fallen. His gaze was distant, filled with both loneliness and fear. Kendra realized that no matter how much she was hurting, Jonathan was no better off. He was lost in his own life, in fragmented memories, and the heavy responsibilities he couldn't recall. Kendra took a deep breath, stood up and walked over to him. She placed a hand on his shoulder, feeling the trembling in his body. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice softer than ever. "I shouldn't have said those things. I was just so afraid." Jonathan turned around, his eyes filled with tears. "Afraid? What are you afraid of, Kendra?" "I'm afraid that when you remember everything, you'll leave me and the children," Kendra said, tears welling up again. "I'm afraid your world is too big and ours is too small. I'm afraid you'll forget us, forget these peaceful days." Jonathan hugged her, his heart full of remorse. "I will never forget. I will never forget these days, never forget you and the children. No matter how big my world is, it can't contain the love I have for you and the children. You and the children are my everything." Kendra sobbed uncontrollably. "Are you telling the truth?" "I am," Jonathan said, his voice firm. "I won't leave you. I won't leave the children. I'll be here with you, with the children. We will build a new life together." Kendra pulled away, looking him straight in the eyes. "A new life? You're a billionaire. You have responsibilities. You have people waiting for you." Jonathan turned back to look at the oak tree. "And I will face those responsibilities. I will solve those problems. I will go back to my world, but not as the old man. I will return as a new man, a man who has found love, a man who has found purpose." Kendra was speechless. She looked at him, her eyes filled with admiration. She realized that Jonathan wasn't just a mysterious man, he was also a strong man. A man who dared to face his past, a man who dared to change his life. Jonathan turned to look at her. "I'm going to propose to you, Kendra. I'm going to propose to you and the children. I'm going to make the children happy. I'm going to make you happy." Kendra sobbed uncontrollably. "Are you telling the truth?" "I am," Jonathan said, his voice firm. "You and the children are my everything." Kendra hugged him, her heart filled with warmth. She realized that Jonathan wasn't just a mysterious man, he was also a man who had fallen in love with her. And she had also fallen in love with him, a man who had brought her new hope. Jonathan didn't lie. He went back to his world, but not as the old man. He returned as a new man, a man who had found love, a man who had found purpose. He solved his problems, and he came back to Kendra and the children. Kendra and Jonathan got married. Kendra became a happy woman, and so did her children. Jonathan became a good father, a good husband, and a good partner. They lived happily ever after, and their love became a real-life fairy tale. The confrontation with Patricia Wells, though intense, became a crucial turning point. It forced Kendra and Jonathan to face the truth, their feelings, and their choices. Kendra realized that her biggest fear wasn't Jonathan, but his world. And Jonathan also realized that he couldn't go back to his old life because it no longer belonged to him. Jonathan spent an entire day resolving his pending work. He didn't fly back to the city, but used Kendra's old laptop to manage his billion-dollar empire. He had a dramatic video conference with Patricia and the board of directors, announcing that he would not be returning as a full-time CEO. He appointed Richard, his trusted assistant, as the new executive chairman and committed to working remotely. This decision sparked a wave of fierce opposition, but Jonathan, with a strange determination, stood by his choice. That afternoon, when Kendra returned home, she saw Jonathan sitting in the armchair, his face tired, but his eyes sparkling with a strange happiness. "I did it," Jonathan said, his voice full of pride. "I've settled everything. I'm not going back to my old life." Kendra ran to hug him, her heart filled with admiration. I knew you would. I always believed in you. Jonathan held out his hand and placed a ring on Kendra's finger. The ring wasn't diamond, but a silver ring engraved with a small oak tree. You and the children are my everything, he said, his voice full of emotion. We will build a new life together. Kendra sobbed uncontrollably. Are you telling the truth? I am. Jonathan said, his voice firm. And I have a special gift for you and the children. Jonathan led Kendra outside. Her old car had been sold, and in its place was a new white car, compact and convenient. This car will help you get around more easily, he said, and we'll go buy a new house together. Kendra was speechless. She looked at him, her eyes full of admiration. A new house? That's right, Jonathan said, his voice full of excitement. A new house close by so the children won't have to change schools. A new house so we can build a new life together. Kendra hugged him, her heart filled with warmth. She realized that Jonathan wasn't just a mysterious man, he was also a man who had fallen in love with her. And she had also fallen in love with him, a man who had brought her new hope. Jonathan didn't lie. He went back to his world, but not as the old man. He returned as a new man, a man who had found love, a man who had found purpose. He solved his problems, and he came back to Kendra and the children. Kendra and Jonathan got married. Kendra became a happy woman, and so did her children. Jonathan became a good father, a good husband, and a good partner. They lived happily ever after, and their love became a real-life fairy tale. And this is the story of a family that became a peaceful haven for a lost soul, and how their kindness changed not only one person's life, but the lives of many others. A month later, Kendra and Jonathan moved into their new home. It wasn't a luxurious mansion, but a cozy and spacious house, much larger than Kendra's old one, with a small, beautiful garden and a separate office for Kendra. Jonathan had respected Kendra's wishes to maintain simplicity and warmth, but with added space for the children to play freely. Olivia and Ella, the two girls, were thrilled with the new house. They loved running in the garden, playing with the neighbors' dogs, and exploring every corner of the house. For the first time in years, Kendra no longer had to worry about money or the burdens of making a living. She could dedicate all her time to caring for her children, cooking delicious meals, reading to them, and playing with them. However, Kendra wasn't one to sit still. She wanted to do something meaningful, to use what she had to help others. One evening, as Kendra and Jonathan were sitting in the garden, Kendra shared her idea with him. I want to start a charity fund, Kendra said, her voice full of passion. A fund for single mothers who are struggling to raise their children. I want to help them have a better life, just like you helped me. Jonathan smiled. That's a wonderful idea, Kendra. I'll help you. What should we name the fund? Kendra asked. Jonathan looked at Kendra, then at the white daisies blooming in the garden. We'll name it the Twin Angel Fund, he said, his voice full of emotion. Because those are the little angels who saved my life. Kendra sobbed uncontrollably. Are you telling the truth? I am, Jonathan said, his voice firm. And I have a special gift for you and the children. Jonathan led Kendra into his office. On the table there was a small red box. Kendra opened the box and found a gold ring engraved with a small oak tree. This ring will help you get around more easily, he said. And we'll go buy a new house together. Kendra hugged him, her heart filled with warmth. She realized that Jonathan wasn't just a mysterious man. He was also a man who had fallen in love with her. And she had also fallen in love with him, a man who had brought her new hope. The Twin Angel Fund was established with financial support from Jonathan. Kendra became the fund's director with Jonathan's help. Together they helped hundreds of single mothers and children, helping them have a better life, just as they had been helped. Kendra and Jonathan got married. Kendra became a happy woman, and so did her children. Jonathan became a good father, a good husband, and a good partner. They lived happily ever after, and their love became a real-life fairy tale. And this is the story of a family that became a peaceful haven for a lost soul, and how their kindness changed not only one person's life, but the lives of many others. Kendra had become a completely different woman. The fatigue and worry on her face had been replaced by the light of hope and confidence. She dedicated all her time and heart to the Twin Angel Fund, turning it from an idea into a truly influential organization. With her own life experience, Kendra deeply understood the challenges single mothers faced. She didn't just provide financial support. She also created vocational training programs, psychological counseling, and a community network for them to share and support each other. Jonathan, now a full-time father, still managed his company remotely, but his priorities had changed. He turned down many multi-billion-dollar contracts to have more time to play with the children, fix up the house, and help Kendra with the fund's work. His life was no longer about numbers on a spreadsheet, but about the laughter of Olivia and Ella, playing in the garden cozy dinners with Kendra, and the happiness of seeing other families being helped. One afternoon, Kendra returned home after a meeting with the fund's members. She found Jonathan and the two children playing Build a Castle with pillows and blankets in the living room. Kendra stood silently, a feeling of peace and completeness spreading through her heart. She had once thought that a happy family was just a distant dream, but now she was living in that very dream. "We are doing something great, Kendra," Jonathan said as she sat down next to him. "I've never felt so clear about my purpose in life. Everything I do now has meaning." "It's not we, it's you," Kendra said, taking his hand. "All of this is because of you." "No." Jonathan shook his head. "It's because of our two little angels. If it weren't for their kindness, you wouldn't have found my purpose. You and the children are the magic in my life." On the 1-year anniversary of the Twin Angel Fund, Jonathan and Kendra held a small party. They invited all the mothers who had been helped by the fund, along with their children. The party was filled with laughter, joy, and stories of change. One young woman stood up and shared her story. She talked about how the fund helped her find a stable job, and now she could afford to send her daughter to dance lessons, a dream she once thought would never come true. Kendra looked at Olivia, who was sitting on Jonathan's lap, her eyes sparkling with pride. "Mom," Olivia whispered, "you were right. Kindness really is magic." Kendra nodded, tears of happiness rolling down her cheeks. She knew that their story wasn't just a love story, but a story about kindness, courage, and hope. This story had begun with a small act, and now it was creating a great legacy. A year after its founding, the Twin Angel Fund had grown significantly. From a small idea, it had become a reputable organization known to many philanthropists and businesses. Kendra, as the executive director, worked not only with her mind, but also with her heart. She met with each case, listened to each story, and provided solutions that not only helped them escape immediate difficulties, but also created a solid foundation for their future. Kendra organized an annual charity gala to raise funds for the organization. At the gala, she invited Jonathan onto the stage to share their story. Jonathan, who had once been shy, had become an inspiring speaker. He not only talked about his fateful meeting with Kendra and the children, but also shared about the change in his perspective on life. "I once thought that success was measured by money, by huge numbers on a spreadsheet," Jonathan said, his voice full of emotion. "But then, I met Kendra and her two daughters, two little angels, who taught me that true success is when you can help others, when you can make someone's life better." Jonathan announced a bold decision: he would dedicate 50% of the company's profits to the Twin Angel Fund and other charities. This decision caused a wave of surprise and admiration. Everyone gave him a standing ovation, and tears of happiness rolled down the cheeks of many. Kendra, standing below the stage, looked at Jonathan. Her heart filled with warmth. She knew that Jonathan wasn't just a good husband and a good father. He was also a great man. He used his wealth to do meaningful things, to make the world a better place. The gala ended, and Kendra and Jonathan drove home together. Olivia and Ella, the two girls, had fallen asleep in the car. Kendra looked at her children, her heart filled with warmth. "Today you two did something great," she said. "You made Mom and Dad so proud." Jonathan smiled. "And you made Mom and Dad happy." They arrived home, and Jonathan gently carried Olivia and Ella to bed. Kendra stood watching, her heart filled with warmth. She had found a partner, a father for her children. A person who had helped her overcome difficulties, and a person who had built a new life with her. And this is the story of a family that became a peaceful haven for a lost soul. And how their kindness changed not only one person's life, but the lives of many others. Spring returned to the town of Oak Creek, bringing with it fresh green shoots and warm sunshine. 2 years had passed since Jonathan Richards collapsed beneath the oak tree, and Kendra's family life had been completely transformed. Jonathan had finished transitioning power at his company. Now he was only involved in major strategic decisions, spending most of his time at home. Kendra, as the executive director of the Twin Angel Fund, had become a powerful and influential woman, but her heart always belonged to her family. Jonathan had adopted Ella and Olivia. This decision was not just a legal formality, but a sacred promise. In a cozy ceremony at the courthouse, with Kendra, Richard, and a few close friends present, Jonathan officially became the father of the two girls. "Daddy," Ella and Olivia ran to hug Jonathan. "Can we call you Daddy?" "Of course, my darlings." Jonathan said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've been waiting for this day for a very long time." Kendra looked at Jonathan, her heart filled with warmth. She knew that Jonathan wasn't just a good husband and a good father. He was also a great man. He had used his wealth to do meaningful things, to make the world a better place. One evening, as Kendra and Jonathan were sitting in the garden, Kendra shared some good news with Jonathan. "I have some happy news to tell you," Kendra said, her voice full of excitement. Jonathan looked at Kendra, his eyes full of curiosity. "What is it, Kendra?" "I'm pregnant," Kendra said, her voice trembling. "We're going to have a baby." Jonathan was stunned. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. He had once thought that he would never have children. He had once thought that he would never have a family. But now Kendra had given him a priceless gift. "Are you serious?" Jonathan said, his voice trembling. "We're going to have a baby?" "I am," Kendra said, her voice firm. "And I have a special gift for you and the children." Jonathan hugged her, his heart filled with warmth. "I love you," he said. "I love you more than this world." On Kendra's birthday, Jonathan gave her a special gift, a diamond ring engraved with a small oak tree. "This ring will help you get around more easily," he said. "And we'll go buy a new house together." Kendra hugged him, her heart filled with warmth. She realized that Jonathan wasn't just a mysterious man. He was also a man who had fallen in love with her. And she had also fallen in love with him, a man who had brought her new hope. Jonathan had not lied. He had returned to his world, but not as the old man. He had returned as a new man, a man who had found love, a man who had found purpose. He had solved his problems, and he had returned to Kendra and the children. Kendra and Jonathan were married. Kendra had become a happy woman, and so had her children. Jonathan had become a good father, a good husband, and a good partner. They lived happily ever after, and their love had become a real-life fairy tale. And this is the story of a family that became a peaceful haven for a lost soul, and how their kindness changed not only one person's life, but the lives of many others. Time flowed by peacefully like a gentle stream. Kendra, now 37, was 6 months pregnant. After getting married, she and Jonathan had built a complete home, not just for themselves, but for many others as well. Olivia and Ella, now 10 years old, had grown into charming, clever girls. One morning, as Kendra was working in the garden, she received a call from the doctor. "I have some good news for you," the doctor said. "You're pregnant, and you're going to have a baby boy." Kendra was stunned. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. She had once thought she would never have another child. She had once thought she would never have a complete family. But now Kendra had given herself a priceless gift. "Is it true?" Kendra said, her voice trembling. "We're going to have a baby boy?" "It's true," the doctor said, his voice firm. "And I have a special gift for you and the children." Kendra hugged him, her heart filled with warmth. "I love you," she said. "I love you more than this world." On Kendra's birthday, Jonathan gave her a special gift, a diamond ring engraved with a small oak tree. "This ring will help you get around more easily," he said. "And we'll go buy a new house together." Kendra hugged him, her heart filled with warmth. She realized that Jonathan wasn't just a mysterious man, he was also a man who had fallen in love with her. And she had also fallen in love with him, a man who had brought her new hope. Jonathan had not lied. He had returned to his world, but not as the old man. He had returned as a new man, a man who had found love, a man who had found purpose. He had solved his problems, and he had returned to Kendra and the children. Kendra and Jonathan were married. Kendra had become a happy woman, and so had her children. Jonathan had become a good father, a good husband, and a good partner. They lived happily ever after, and their love had become a real-life fairy tale. And this is the story of a family that became a peaceful haven for a lost soul, and how their kindness changed not only one person's life, but the lives of many others. Gabriel Jonathan Richards, the son of Kendra and Jonathan, was born on a peaceful autumn morning. The baby boy was a priceless gift, the culmination of their love and a testament to a complete life. Kendra and Jonathan, now a bustling family, were always filled with laughter and happiness. Olivia and Ella, the two girls, adored their little brother. They loved playing with Gabriel, singing him children's songs and telling him fairy tales. Gabriel, from a newborn, grew into a mischievous, clever little boy. He loved playing with his sisters, being cuddled by them and being protected by them. Kendra and Jonathan, now successful individuals, always made time for family. Jonathan, once a busy man, had become a good father, a good husband, a good life partner. He used his wealth to do meaningful things to make the world a better place. The Twin Angel Fund, from a small idea, had become a reputable organization known to many philanthropists and businesses. Kendra, as the executive director, worked not only with her mind, but also with her heart. She met with each case, listened to each story, and provided solutions that not only helped them escape immediate difficulties, but also created a solid foundation for their future. One evening, as Kendra and Jonathan were sitting in the garden, Kendra shared some good news with Jonathan. "I have some happy news to tell you," Kendra said, her voice full of excitement. Jonathan looked at Kendra, his eyes full of curiosity. "What is it, Kendra?" "I'm pregnant," Kendra said, her voice trembling. "We're going to have a baby." Jonathan was stunned. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. He had once thought that he would never have children. He had once thought that he would never have a complete family. But now Kendra had given him a priceless gift. "Are you serious?" Jonathan said, his voice trembling. "We're going to have a baby." "I am," Kendra said, her voice firm, "and I have a special gift for you and the children." Jonathan hugged her, his heart filled with warmth. "I love you," he said. "I love you more than this world." On Kendra's birthday, Jonathan gave her a special gift, a diamond ring engraved with a small oak tree. "This ring will help you get around more easily," he said. "And we'll go buy a new house together." Kendra hugged him, her heart filled with warmth. She realized that Jonathan wasn't just a mysterious man. He was also a man who had fallen in love with her. And she had also fallen in love with him, a man who had brought her new hope. Jonathan had not lied. He had returned to his world, but not as the old man. He had returned as a new man, a man who had found love, a man who had found purpose. He had solved his problems, and he had returned to Kendra and the children. Kendra and Jonathan were married. Kendra had become a happy woman, and so had her children. Jonathan had become a good father, a good husband, and a good partner. They lived happily ever after, and their love had become a real-life fairy tale. And this is the story of a family that became a peaceful haven for a lost soul, and how their kindness changed not only one person's life, but the lives of many others.